Hey, MathKook here. This video contains one of many examples in my Algebra 2 library. The rest of those examples, along with hundreds of other videos, are only available at mathkook.com. Let's MathKook it up. Hey Kooks, this question says, given h of x is 2 over x and g of x equals negative x all over x minus 3, we found that g of h of x equals negative 2 all over 2 minus 3x. Find its domain. So they want the domain of the composite function g of h of x. So how do we find the domain of a composite function? Here are the steps. Step number 1 is find the domain of the inner function g of x. Now I wrote g of x here just because that's the general form of a composite function, f of g of x. In this problem though, in this example, g of x is not the inner function, it's actually h of x, because it's on the inside here. So let's go ahead and label that. So h of x here is our inner function. So we need to find the domain of that function. So let's bring it down here. So whenever we're looking for restrictions to help us find the domain, we look for x's underneath the square root or in the denominator typically. So in this case, we do have an x in the denominator. So because of that, x cannot equal 0. Now the reason it cannot equal 0 is because you can't have a 0 on the bottom of a fraction. That'll make the fraction undefined. So that's our only restriction on our inner function h of x. Next, step number 2, we would evaluate f of g of x. Now that's already been done for us, and that's a long series of steps. If you want to watch a video on how I find composite functions, I do several examples in lesson 58, which is titled Composition of Functions. And I actually do this exact example in one of the examples. All right, so we've done that. We have our composite function here. Next, step 3, you find the domain of that composite function. So I'll bring it down here. So we're going to find the domain of this guy. So again, we look at the bottom. We don't want any x's or any zeros on the bottom. So we have to figure out what x value would make the bottom 0. That'll be a restriction on x. So we set the bottom equal to 0, and then we solve. So we subtract 2 to both sides. We get negative 3x equals negative 2. Then we divide by negative 3, and we get 2/3. So this tells us that x cannot equal 2/3. So now, step number 4, we overlap the domain of the inner function, in this case h of x, and the composite function, in this case g of h of x, and that's the domain of the overall function g of h of x. So here, x cannot equal 0 and x cannot equal 2/3. So we're going to overlap those domains. Those are two restrictions basically on our domain. So our domain is going to be all real numbers, but x cannot equal 0 and 2/3. Or if we write our answer in interval notation, it would be negative infinity all the way to 0. And then all the numbers between 0 and 2/3 work. And then all the numbers after 2/3 work. So we go 2/3 to infinity. All right. So there is our answer. This answer here is in interval notation. So we'll write that out. This one was an interval notation. Hey Kook, if you found this video helpful, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment. For unlimited access to all of my Algebra 2 videos, visit mathkook.com. Thanks for watching.